All right, thank you everyone for coming to the camp today and to my talk, Building Meaningful Network Connections. So just as a warning, if you're here because you want to learn how to make computers talk to each other, this is not the talk for you. This is about making people talk to each other. So you can leave. There's plenty of other technical talks, but this is more of a people talk. The slides are available at bit.ly/nedconnect with a capital C. They're somewhat annotated, so they should have all the information you need, except for some of the live things I'm going to do here today. All right, so who am I? I am someone who hasn't turned on their clicker. All right, hello. I'm Mike Miles. I've been working in the Drupal community for over a decade. I run the Boston Drupal meetup. I'm one of the organizers here at NedCamp. I write modules and do code and all that stuff and speak. During the day, I'm the VP of Technology for a digital marketing agency called Genuine, a full-service digital agency, not a Drupal shop. We do have a team that does Drupal. So I help make sure that everybody in the development department is active and engaged and doing great work and supporting our great clients. At night, I have a podcast called Developing Up, which is focused on the non-technical side of being a developer or an engineer. So it's everything you need to know to have a career in development that's not about writing code. So it's all those other things, such as learning how to network with other people. So season 3 is wrapping up shortly, so you can find that at developingup.com. If you want to find me anywhere else, learn more about me for whatever reason, most of the time I'm online as Mike Miles 86, on Drupal, on Twitter, on LinkedIn. I don't think Google Plus is a thing anymore, so not on Google Plus, and not on Facebook. The last time I gave this talk, the sponsor at the camp who spoke before me was Facebook, and then I had to say, I'm not on Facebook. He didn't like that. All right, so networking. Dun, dun, dun. I said that without any emphasis. Naturally, I am an introverted person. I am not very outgoing, all right? I've gotten better at it. But, so networking is a big, scary word to me. You know, talking to other people, making a connection, either professionally or personally. And I'm going to venture a guess that a lot of people in the digital world are like me. They find networking to be scary. You're told, you know, when you're in school, network is important. It's all about building your network, and they're right. That doesn't make it any less scary. And my topic title, Meaningful Networking Connections, it's all about meaningful. You can network and learn how to talk to people and have niceties with people and say, hey, I remember you, how are you doing? But if you're not building meaningful connections, it's useless to you. It's useless to that person to have that connection, besides, you know, building a friendship. So what I want to talk about today is why and how to build meaningful network connections with other people that are beneficial to yourself, beneficial to that person, that either help your career, help your personal life, or just makes it more fulfilling. And it's important to do that because of, you know, 3 circles that kind of overlap. One is the more people you can connect with in a meaningful way, the more opportunities that you're going to find in life. This could be professional opportunities, it could be personal opportunities. These can lead to benefits in your career. This could be from transitioning between jobs and roles. This could be to building a network of other professionals that you can turn to when you're stuck on problems or you need help, or they can turn to you. And then this, in a way, you know, improves your life. It allows you to, when you're in those social engagements, maybe, you know, you have to bring your kid to a birthday party and you have to talk to other parents. Making it so it's not just that painful small talk, but you could build these connections, these personal connections with your community and improve your life in that way and find those opportunities. So networking is important for everybody here because being able to talk to people and make an impact is an important life skill. It's something we all should be working on doing. You know, humans, we're social creatures. Whether we want to be or not, that's how we're hardwired. So learning how to do it better is only going to help yourself and help others. So what I'm going to talk about is the 3 phases of networking, the way I see it broken down. I'm a developer at heart. I'm somebody who likes to write code, so I like to build out systems with repeatable steps. Makes me feel a lot more safe and comfortable. So I have 8 steps across these 3 phases to how I approach building a network and connecting with other people that I use in pretty much all my professional settings. So I'm going to explain these to you, and I'm going to use some real-world use cases from my life. Some of them are embarrassing, and I'm happy to share those embarrassments with you, just to show how they can be applied and how you can use them. Sound good? Great. Sound good? Yeah. Great. So 3 phases of networking. Networking is broken up into 3 phases, the way I see it. There's the preparation, where you're getting ready to enter in the situation. Either that's going to an after party at a conference, going to a conference, going to a one-on-one to talk to somebody, going on an interview. There's the engagement, which is the bulk of it. This is when you're actually talking with other people and talking with them and building up a connection, trying to find something you have in common. And then there's the connection phase. This is after you have that initial conversation, that initial engagement. How do you keep it alive? How do you actually keep, I'm going to use a computer term, how do you keep pinging that request, keeping it going? I told somebody I'd work that in, so I did. I'll try to work in media still. And I think this 3rd phase is something that when you just enter a social situation, a professional situation, it's easy to forget about. It's all about the engagement, right? I'm going to talk to people at this conference, it's going to be great, and then you leave the conference and you don't say anything to that person until you see them at the next conference, and that's not really beneficial. So let's break this up into steps. Step 1, having a plan of attack. It's all about knowing what you're going to do in any situation. So if you don't have a plan of attack, what's going to happen is when you enter in a potential networking situation, it can become very overwhelming. If you don't know how you want to succeed, you're not going to know that you're going to succeed, and you're just going to either flounder or not do anything or stay in your safe space. So I say set a goal. In any networking situation, pick the one thing you want to accomplish and just focus on that. You don't have to boil the ocean. You don't have to make anything big or grand plans for yourself, but something that you feel like you could achieve. It could be, I am going to learn the name of one new person. I am going to learn what 2 people are interested in and what brought them to this conference. I'm going to make sure I ask a question about what somebody knows about Gatsby. Right? You pick one goal and you focus on achieving that one goal. So here's my case study for that first one, called the GRAYSON connection. So this GIF that you see here, this man dancing, I don't expect all of you, some of you I know who this person is, some people don't. This is John Grayson. He was the previous CEO and president of Genuine, the company I've worked at for the last 10 years. This was actually at my wedding. He was the officiant at my wedding for my wife and I. So when I was fresh out of college, as usually happens to college students, I was in a job I did not enjoy. Like it was my first development job. I didn't read the contract. The people I worked for were not the greatest people. I was very unhappy. And I was invited at my college to participate in an evening to talk about the computer science department and how they want to revamp the program. And so I was talking to one of my old professors, and I was telling her how I disliked my current job, and I was not happy with what I was doing and the people. And she looked at me and she said, there's a person coming tonight who owns an agency who might be looking for developers. I'm going to sit you next to him, and your job tonight is to talk to him, to learn about him, and to make him learn about you. So she gave me a goal for that night. Yes, I was supposed to participate and for the reason I was there, but my goal was to talk to John Grayson, because that's who sat down next to me. So I spent the night talking to him, engaging, learning about his business, kind of trying to sell myself as a developer to him. By the end of the night, we had such a great conversation. He gave me his business card and asked for my resume. I sent it the next day. 2 days later, I had an interview. By the end of the week, I had a job offer. Now, had my professor not given me that goal, what I would have done naturally, sat down next to John, I would have said hello, and then I would have paid attention, not to him, but just to what I was there for. I wouldn't have tried to make a connection with him. And I would have not have found that opportunity that I've been at for the last 10 years. My life, my career, my professional life would be completely different if it wasn't for that goal. So setting a goal is the first thing you need to do in any networking situation. Know what you want to get out of it and focus on that one thing. Number 2, I call method acting. Who are you going to be for the situation? Now, it can be easy, at least for myself and for humans, to react negatively to situations. To go in to be like, I have this goal to meet one new person, but I'm not the sort of person who can just do that. I'm not that sort of person who can just walk up to strangers and talk to them. So what you want to do is try to figure out what's the best version of yourself that would work for the situation. It doesn't even have to be who you are. It could be somebody that you know. It could be like, my friend Andy, he's really good at these situations. I'm going to try to be like how Andy is in these situations. I call it about, adopting a persona. Coming up the best version of yourself for that situation and be that person. Now, at first, this isn't easy to do. I'm not claiming it is. And it's going to feel fake to you at first. If you're like, I want to be like Andy, he's really outgoing. When I enter this situation, I'm just going to think to myself, what would Andy do? And you're going to have to remind yourself of that the whole night, like the first time you do it. And it's going to feel fake until you start, faking it till you make it. So a case study for this is every time I present. So the person before you right now is presenter Mike Miles. This is not who I am. This is my default way of operating. But I've come up with this persona after speaking for a number of years, and it's based off of all the great presenters I've seen, and I continually work on it. So I think about what do people do that I really engage with when they're presenting. How do they act? How do they react to the crowd? How do they present material? How can I do that? And I try to do that. Because this is a sort of networking, right? It's more one way instead of a two-way road. But I adopt this speaking persona, and I put it on, and I present, and then afterwards I will black out, and I won't remember how I did. Because it's like, this is presenter Mike, it's not day-to-day Mike. But it's become more natural to me. So when I turned on the microphone and I said hello to you, I immediately switched to that persona. I don't have to think about it anymore. When I go into a networking situation, I become networking Mike Miles. I don't have to think about it anymore. Because the more you do it, the more natural it becomes. All right, so rule 3, the 3-second rule, which is great that it's number 3. So you figured out your goal, you figured out who you want to be to achieve that goal. The next is actually start interacting with somebody. And this can be scary. It can be, cause a lot of anxiety. The 3-second rule is something I got from the author Neil Strauss, who wrote the book The Game, which is actually about dating. And I did not use this for dating. Happily married. But he was on the Smart Passive Income podcast with Pat Flynn in episode 240, where he said, never give yourself more than 3 seconds to psych yourself out if you want to meet somebody. So it's all about, if you see someone you want to talk to, you are only giving yourself 3 seconds before you go and do it. It's all about outrunning any anxiety you may have for that situation. Because if you take longer than that, you're going to start thinking in your head, well, no, maybe I shouldn't do that. Maybe it's not a good time to talk to them. Oh, what am I going to say? And you start to get anxious about it, and you won't do that. So it's giving yourself 3 seconds. Just be like, I'm going to go shake hands with that person, introduce myself, and walk over and do it. It's about being fearless. The way you could start to overcome this is to just think, what's the worst that could happen by introducing yourself? Most of the time what's going to happen is, the worst thing that could happen is someone's just not going to engage back with you. And that's okay. This is all about building meaningful connections. And if someone doesn't want to connect with you, you'd rather take the 3 seconds to figure that out, to move on to the next situation, and then spend half the night trying to psych yourself up to talk to somebody, to have it not work out, and then have to sulk away. So the worst that could happen is that someone's not going to want to engage, and you move on. So use 3 seconds to get over that fear and do that.
And then you're no worse off than you were before.
Right. Yeah, there's no loss there. You're just where you were when you started. So, case study for this is the first time I met DRIES. DRIES is just a guy, but in our community, the Drupal community, he's a big deal. Right? He's the rock star in the room. This is the embarrassing story. So, a number of years ago at DrupalCon Portland, DRIES goes to all the DrupalCons. There was an Acquia after party, and I went, and DRIES was there, and there are a lot of people there, and I didn't have the tool sets I have now for talking with other people, especially people who I admire like DRIES. And I saw him at the party, and I spent half the night thinking to myself, I am going to talk to DRIES. Like, that's what I'm going to do tonight. Like, I just want to tell him how much I love Drupal and how much it's meant to me, and thank you for creating it, and I want to do all these things. But I was so nervous about doing it that I spent the whole night pretty much like hovering around him, walking around the room, making my rounds, which involved stopping at the bar that had free whiskey drinks, which is not a way to overcome fear, but that was my mechanism at the time. So I was walking around DRIES, getting drinks, walking around DRIES, getting anxious. Finally, I reached the point where I was like, that's it, I'm just going to do it. I kind of got close to him. I'm like, all right, I'm going to engage. 1, 2, 3, and I stepped in front of him, and the worst thing that could happen happened. I didn't spill a drink on him or anything, but I got immediately yanked aside by someone who was there with him. I had stepped in between DRIES talking to the I think it was the CIO for the White House at the time. They were in mid-conversation. You know, I'd been drinking whiskey drinks, and I stepped in between them because I wanted to talk to DRIES. Very embarrassing, but the person's like, he's talking to this person, he'll talk to you in a moment. And so I kind of, you know, waited there, and DRIES was polite, and he turned to me, and I quickly blathered like, oh, thanks for making Drupal, it's great to meet you. All right, I gotta go. I ran away. But I did it. So that story is about, you know, building up that courage. I did it the wrong way, but eventually I reached that conclusion where I only gave myself 3 seconds to do it. I finally got to that phase myself. I recommend you try to do that without drinking. But the worst thing that could happen was I got pulled away, I embarrassed myself, but then I moved on and I recovered from the night. I've since then met DRIES a number of times after that. It hasn't been as bad as that. He doesn't remember it at all, I'm sure. I remember it every time I see him. All right. What are you going to do when you approach somebody, though? Say cheese. It's all about what's going on with your face. So let me ask the group here, who would you rather talk to? The person on your left or the person on your right? Probably on your left, right? On your left? Correct. Yeah, it's on your left. This is about entering a situation in a positive way. You don't have to smile, but you don't want to enter it in a way that's going to be negative because you want to set the tone for the engagement you're about to have. So if you enter it in a positive way with a smile on your face or just knowing that the belief that it's going to be a positive interaction, more likely you're going to have those results. So you want to keep positive. I say, you know, smile, be open, be friendly. When you walk up to somebody, you know, smile on your face, not a joker smile, but just like, hey, how's it going? It's nice to meet you. I'm excited to talk to you. Sort of attitude. Then as soon as you start talking to somebody, the first thing you need to do is remember the magic word. Yes, please is the magic word, but not in this situation. You want to mention the thing that everyone loves to hear. I get this from Dale Carnegie, who wrote the book How to Win Friends and Influence People. Remember that a person's name is to that person the sweetest and most important sound in any language. That's the magic word. You think about it. Whenever you're in a situation, if you hear your name, no matter how big the room is, you hear the person talking, mentioning your name. Is that correct? Right? We're tuned to hear our names. So if you learn someone's name and you start using it in your conversation, it's one, going to keep them engaged with you because they're going to keep unconsciously listening to you. And it's also going to show them that you're paying attention because you actually learned who they are. Because I'm sure we've all been in those situations where someone gives you their name and then you're like, I wasn't paying attention. I don't remember their name. Good talking to you, buddy. Like, you know, and that's not going to work out. It's not going to be a way to set a meaningful connection. So Dale Carnegie has this formula. It's called the LIRA formula for helping you how to remember someone's name. I'm just going to go through this a little bit. You want to look and listen. So when you approach somebody and say, hey, nice to meet you, I'm Mike, what's your name? At that point, you are not thinking about anything else. You're not looking at anything else. You're paying attention to that person. You're listening to what they're going to say back to you. You want to do this in conversations anyways, but you want to listen and really pay attention 100% to what they're going to tell you their name is. Then you want to create an impression of that person. Make notes of anything that is meaningful to you that will help you make an association with that person. Something I've heard to do, which actually works out, is once you learn someone's name, try to think about somebody you know or that you've heard of that you can remember that shares that same name. So it'd be like, oh, your name's Doug? Oh, wait, I used to watch the cartoon Doug on Nickelodeon, so I'm going to remember Doug. And like build that connection. Repeat the person's name. You want to do this in your head and out loud. So, hey, what's your name? Doug? Nice to meet you, Doug. What brings you to the conference today? Ask some more questions. You're talking some more, which we'll get into. It's like, Doug, that was great. A great conversation. That's a great point you made. Thanks for bringing it up. You have to learn how to balance this. You don't want to be like, hey, Doug, nice to meet you, Doug. Welcome. What are you doing today, Doug? Well, Doug, that was a great conversation, Doug. Like, you want to try to use it so that you remember it, and again, it keeps them interested. And then just make an association to the context of what you're talking to this person. And this is going to play in later on. As you're talking to that person, make connection like, I talked to Doug about Gatsby. I talked to Doug about Gatsby. And so that you can remember next time you talk to them some context of the connection you started. So learn names. It's the only way to make someone not a stranger. When someone's not a stranger, you can start to be more comfortable and open up and find something that you have in common that you can build something meaningful from. That gets into the bulk of engagement. Rule 6, riddle me this. If you have a hard time coming up with conversation and you don't want to ask about the weather again, or you don't want to just have something superficial, you want to build meaningfulness, a meaningful connection with somebody, learn to ask questions. These are not yes or no questions, these are not complex questions, but they're questions that you're going to use to help find a common connection between you and that other person. So, in the situation I'll keep using as at a conference that we're all at, it's like, hey Doug, nice to meet you, what brings you to the conference today? Oh, that's great, you're just learning about Drupal, what got you interested into Drupal? Oh, you started working at a digital agency. I work for a digital agency. That's interesting. What drew you to that? Try to find something and just dig into questions until you find something you both have in common and build from there so that you can relate to each other. This doesn't have to be about something professional. It could be something, personal. It'd be like, oh, where'd you grow up? Oh, you grew up in Chicago? I've been to Chicago. I really like it. Like something like that. Case study for this is strangers in Iceland. So a couple years ago, I was honored to be able to go to Drupal Camp Northern Lights in Iceland. It was amazing. Did anybody else here go to that? No, I'm sorry. It was okay then. It was great. There was people there from like 37 different countries. So a lot of people I didn't know. And so come lunchtime, I was really anxious about who to sit with. Usually I gravitate to people I already know. It's comfortable for me. But I had to sit down with people I didn't really know at all. So I was going to use this as a situation to try to build a connection with people, and I had to ask questions. Now, luckily, the night before, Reykjavik, which was the town the conference was in, had a record snowfall from like the past 50 years, the most snow in one night. So we all had to trudge there in like thigh-deep snow, and so there was something fun I could ask them about, and I was just like, how did everybody manage through the snow this morning? So people were telling me like what they did, like they weren't expecting it. There was somebody who's never actually experienced snow before, it was their first time. There was someone who helped somebody else push a car out of a ditch. So we started talking about all these things because we had this common connection. And then from there, I started building up what brought you to the conference, what are you interested in? And asking people's names, of course. From then, there's a couple of these people that, from that conference, I talked to them through the rest of the conference. I kept in touch with them, like Dwayne here. I've talked to Dwayne so many times. It's just, we started with this common connection all by asking questions and before I knew what they were. So I didn't have to worry about what I was going to say to them. So the last part of building a connection is ending it. And this seems like a little counterintuitive. So say you're having a great conversation with somebody, you're asking great questions, you're finding common ground. What's either going to happen is you're going to keep talking, which is great, talk as long as it seems natural, or you're going to things are going to feel like they're starting to wander. Either the person's body language is going to tell you they're trying to pay attention to something else, or you're running out of things you want to say. Maybe you're not finding any common ground. Feel free to learn how to end the conversation and move on, whether it's positive or negative. Hopefully it was a positive engagement. So it's all about saying goodbye. Leaving the conversation, ending it when it feels like it's the appropriate time to start straggle on. And if it was positive, collect some information about that person. So this could be as easy as, I won't say easy, but this could be as basic as saying, hey, you know what, it was great talking to you about Gatsby. I feel like we really learned something. Do you have a card? Maybe we could talk later about this. I want to go, grab some lunch, or I'm going to go sit in this session. So it'd be great to connect later on with you. And they'd be like, yeah, here's my information. Great to talk to you, and you can leave. What's beneficial about this also is making sure that you end a conversation is if you have that one goal of I'm going to meet this one person, you don't want to then just glob onto that one person and spend the whole conference like stuck to their side. That's going to turn into a negative situation really quickly. If you can tell the person kind of wants to move away, but they're being polite, then they're not going to want to connect with you later on. So feel free to end the conversation on a high note, collect information so that you can connect later on and keep it going. So that's where I lead into the follow through. Where I say keep pinging the connection. This is all about if you found some common ground, something meaningful that you talked about, you got someone's information, you don't want to wait till the next conference, the next professional setting where you see that person. If it's something you really want to build meaning out of, you want to keep talking with them. So keep in touch. Send them an email like the next couple of days and be like, hey, you know what, we talked about Gatsby. I had a really great conversation. How was the rest of the conference for you? What did you think of some of the sessions? Or maybe it's like, hey, I know we both work down the street from each other. Why don't we grab a coffee or a beer? I have some more questions about Gatsby. I don't know why I keep using Gatsby, but would you like to do that? And that way you can start to build these little situations where you're engaging with this person. So the next time you see them, like at a conference, it's not just like, hey, I haven't seen you in so long. It could be like, hey, I already knew you were coming here because we were just talking through email a couple days ago. So what are you excited for today? And they become, again, more from a stranger, more of a professional contact or a friend that you can lean on. So a case study for this is called Connecting with Carl. This is Carl L. Hughes. He is the CTO of the Grade Network out of Chicago. So I met Carl at a PHP conference in Boston a couple years ago. He was a speaker, I was a speaker, and so the night before the conference, I sat down next to him at the speaker dinner. I had some of these tools, so I engaged with Carl, and I learned a bit about himself. Found out that we both, one, like speaking at conferences, and like finding conferences to speak at can be difficult, except for the ones you already know about. And I learned that he was really interested in like building a list of that, and he actually turned it into a newsletter called CFP Land that I kept in touch with him about, and I found his newsletter and signed up. We kept talking, and I would send him, I would listen to his speaking engagements. He's listened to a couple of mine, and we kept emailing. And there was a situation with my podcast where I was like, I really want to talk about public speaking. I think it's an important skill. So I knew Carl was really into it. I knew he was from a development background, so I was able to reach out to him and be like, hey, Carl, do you want to be on my podcast and talk about this? I was like, I know you're in Chicago. I'm going to be in Chicago for work. And he was like, great, let's grab coffee beforehand and just catch up. I was like, that's great. So I went to Chicago, I caught up with Carl, and we just had a great afternoon. And then later on in the day, we recorded a podcast, and I was on his blog for a speaker profile. And it was just a great professional connection, but it was a great personal connection as well. He's someone I can turn to and be like, hey, do you know of any great conferences that are happening, in February? And he can be like, oh yeah. And I can be like, oh, by the way, how are things going? How's your work going? I wouldn't have that connection if I didn't keep in touch with Carl, because I would have met him at that one conference as speakers, and I probably wouldn't engage with him again since he's based in Chicago and I'm based in Boston. The chances for me to interact with him, are very slim. So those are my 3 phases of networking. The prep phase. Make sure you have a goal to whatever networking situation you're going into. Figure out a persona that works for you for that situation, best version of yourself that you could be in that situation. In the engagement, use 3 seconds to outrun any anxiety you have about interacting with somebody. Enter into a conversation in a positive way. Think that you're going to have a positive outcome. Learn the person's name, the most important thing you could do. And then ask questions. Start a conversation by asking simple questions that have a complex answer so you can dig down deeper and find a common connection. And then connect. Don't linger if the conversation is ending and you feel like it's going to end. Collect information and then keep in touch and follow up with that. And if you do this, the more you do it, the more natural it becomes, and then you get continued results. Lather and repeat. The more you do it, the more chances you have of finding a connection that is meaningful. The more chances you have to step away from situations where you're not going to build a connection because you know what to look for and you can get that feeling. And I say go for it. If I can do this, like I said, naturally I'm an introverted person, so if I can do this, anybody in this room can. And in fact, I know that after this talk is lunch. So I'm going to give everybody here a goal. Is that during lunch period, everyone here, I give you the goal of sitting down next to one person you don't know and learning what brought them to the conference. And then try to find something you have in common. The worst that will happen is that person is going to turn to the other person on the other side and talk to them instead. And then you just turn to the other person to the other side. It's great. You have 2 chances to do it. But go for it. Try it. See what happens. Because I assume not everyone here knows everybody already at the conference. So you already know you have something in common about Drupal. You're both in the same situation. You're both here at the conference. Make that connection. Just try to go for it. So I have some slides here, some resources. So I have these slides available at that bit.ly link, Ned Connect. On my podcast, we had a topic about public speaking. I actually recorded it at DrupalCon last year. So with Chris Free from Chromatic. So you can find that at developingup.com/35. The podcast episode about the 3-second rule is smartpassiveincome.com/session240. And then a book that I really like, you'll find people who like it or hate it, How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. It's been in print for like 90 years, and it's all about how to engage with people and talk with them. It really helped me out. I recommend giving it a read. So with that, I want to say thank you for coming to my talk. And if there are any questions, I'm happy to try to answer them. If not, I'm happy for applause. Well, I'm always happy for applause, but I also welcome questions. So I just want to say thank you. Now applause. Any questions?
All right, I'll give you a comment since there's no question.
Sure, comment.
I love the fact that you have personas that you think of as not you, that you put on for certain situations. I've always been fascinated by that. And there's a great, terrible movie called The Heist with Gene Hackman. Do you know that movie?
Yes.
Yes. And there's a moment in the movie where they're like, how do you come up with these crimes? And he's like, I picture a person who's better than me, who doesn't make mistakes, who's very thorough, and then I do what that person does, which is ridiculous, because that's just him in a construct thinking about what he should do, but it works. And I think having a persona and a way you can put it on is just a very clever way to approach it.
Well, so just for the recording, the comment was, it's interesting about putting on personas that aren't you, and using the example of the movie The Heist, where Gene Hackman's character does that for doing heists. A way I've heard of it as well is that, everyone here has trouble giving themselves advice, but it's easy to give your friends advice when you see them in a situation. Be like, you should do this. So putting on the persona is kind of you telling yourself, I should do this, because you're going to be like, what should that person do?
Right.
And then, I bet you are that person, but then you can picture it as a third person. And it makes it easier to figure out what's the way to approach the situation. But great comment. Great movie, too, if you haven't seen it, The Heist. What's that, from the 90s?
2001.
Really, that late? 2001, The Heist. If you like heist movies, that's a good one. Great. With that, I'm not going to linger. I'm going to let you go. It was great talking to you all. If you want to connect, here's my information. I'm happy to have a conversation that'll be meaningful, even though it will be my connection persona. Great.